Welcome to the Historic Preservation Commission meeting. The time is now 3 p.m. Today is June 17th, and we are meeting at the Tom Baker Room, unless I said that already, which I probably totally did. Darcy, can you please call the roll?
Commissioner Sackerson?
Here.
Commissioner Nodlin?
Here.
Commissioner Zanker?
Here.
Commissioner Hall?
Here.
Commissioner Perrin?
Here.
Commissioner Swanson?
Here.
And Chair Engel.
Here. All right. Starting with the Historic Preservation Report, all of the Section 106 reviews are in your packet for perusal. And we'll move on to the approval of the meeting minutes for last meeting.
I move to approve.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion, corrections? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Commissioner Zanker?
Yes.
Nodlin?
Yes.
Perrin?
Yes.
Hall?
Yes.
Swanson?
Yes.
Sackerson?
Yes.
And Chair Engel.
Yes. All right, motion passes. Thank you. Moving on to the public comment period. We have a presenter in the audience and one visitor, but I don't think there's anybody here that wants to present. Is there anybody online?
There's no signal.
Okay, hearing none, the public comment period will be closed, and we will move into the 2024 Historic Preservation Fund Grant update from Lauren.
Good afternoon, Chair Engel and Commissioners. This meeting will be a little bit longer than last month, so sorry about that in advance. South Fork Historical Research, the consultant for our South Capitol Survey project, has submitted the report for review. Our consultant is here in the audience for any questions. Information on the project was included in your packet. The consultant has also provided recommendations for further work in that area. Revised scope of work and contract amendment was signed by the city and the consultant for that additional work for that presentation and public summary document as requested by this commission at their April 2026 meeting. The presentation is scheduled for August 12th of this year at 6:30 p.m. At the Bismarck Veterans Memorial Public Library, 515 North 5th Street for anyone online, and it's in meeting room A. Staff recommends reviewing and providing feedback on the submitted draft survey to the consultant. And like I said, if the consultant's here if you guys have any questions related to that report. Thanks.
All right. Welcome.
Chair Engel and Commissioners, thank you. Happy to be here, and I did provide a few visual aids for sort of a summary of the survey results. However, I know that you have all had a copy of the draft, which was also submitted to SHPO for their review, just to try to keep things going concurrently and sort of for the most efficient review I can hope for. So just a review of the goals of this project. The purpose of the inventory was to determine whether or not there was an eligible National Register Historic Places district in the what's called the South Capitol neighborhood, and if so, what those boundaries might be, what would be considered contributing or non-contributing. Do I control this here? Okay. And then just because I know that people watch this at home, I thought I would just put in a little information about what we're talking about here as a historic district. So historic districts are concentrations of historic places that have some kind of relationship to one another, either a concentration or a continuity of sites, building structures that are unified historically or aesthetically. And they derive their importance. A significant statement would have to do with these as a whole. And a district boundary could also happen to include properties that are not contributing to that history. Contributing properties would date to the determined period of significance for the neighborhood district, and contributing properties would have to have enough of its physical, architecture, its original character and integrity to represent that particular period. And any of that are altered beyond recognition or do not date within the period of significance that gets determined. Those would just be non-contributing within the boundary. And then, of course, we'll have a public meeting in August, as Lauren said, and just so people know that property owners within this neighborhood may want to attend that because they'll likely have questions about what this would mean for their home, but that a simple majority, 50% or more of the property owners in a proposed district would have to object to stop that progress or that process, and I'm sure that you'll be reaching that point if you pursue a district nomination. So, 182 properties were surveyed, and I thought I would put these together in a slide. Lauren was able to make a map for me to color code that's in the report, but I also pulled it into a pie chart just to represent the themes, the eras that are in the Bismarck timeline. That timeline sort of served as the historic context for evaluating each of these properties. And one of the main takeaways from this project, the earliest house in the neighborhood is 1882, and the largest number, 69% of the properties surveyed, are within that growing capital city era, 1898 to 1930, which served as the basis for my recommendation of a likely period of significance that would be successful in a nomination. I also thought you might be interested to see a breakdown of the architectural styles represented, as a reconnaissance survey generally looks at high-level trends and styles of architecture present. The highest percentage is bungalow, which in my report you may have read isn't really a style so much as it is a form. But there are many bungalows in this neighborhood. 18% of the properties surveyed are bungalows. 13% are eclectic, which really isn't the most helpful thing when you're thinking about the breakdown of styles, except to say that this isn't necessarily a high-style neighborhood. It's reflective of more vernacular approaches to architecture and a lot of builders rather than trained architects, though there are examples of architect-designed homes in this neighborhood. And I've pulled out a sampling of them. I did not do a deep dive of every possible architect or builder who may have had work in this neighborhood, but I did note those when I came across them, and I would love to research some of these people. Some of them are familiar. Arthur Van Horn is a well-known Bismarck architect, Freshley and Sons, Beatty, Ritterbusch Brothers, probably familiar to many people, but there are also some contractors, builders, carpenters who I was able to come across and credit their work in the neighborhood. And just as a summary, 182 properties were recorded, as I said. My recommendation is based on just the numbers and sort of how those numbers reflect what was going on in Bismarck throughout those different themes, the eras in the Bismarck history timeline. So my recommendation would be that you do have a eligible historic district here, and a successful or a likely to be successful period of significance would be 1882 from the earliest house in the neighborhood through 1930, which coincides with some other big changes in Bismarck and also just a sort of a drop-off in the number of new builds in the neighborhood. Areas of significance could include architecture, settlement, politics, government, and social history. And if you were to follow these recommendations for pursuing a National Register nomination for this potential district, 114 of those surveyed would be contributing and 64 would be non-contributing. Of course, the survey boundary isn't necessarily what you would propose as the district boundary. There are areas, concentrations where you could move the boundary in to exclude some of the non-contributing properties that are contiguous. Like in the upper right corner, you see there are a number of non-contributing properties. So it wouldn't make sense to necessarily include them in the district boundary. So that would kind of change your ratio of contributing to non-contributing. Or another recommendation that I included in my report for further work is to extend the survey to 3rd Street to the west and possibly 7th Street to the east, which might also change those numbers of contributing and non-contributing. But this was it was an educated but somewhat arbitrary survey boundary based on concentration of known older properties, and there may be similar related properties in the fringe around. I would think that 3rd Street and 7th Street being high traffic corridors, there could be probably a pretty easy case to be made that maybe those would be logical, reasonable boundaries for a historic district nomination, in which case additional survey work along 3rd and 7th Street would be warranted. But I'm sure you have questions about this work, and I would be happy to answer any, and I'm really hoping that you've got comments on the report that I can take and put into my revised submission. So, thank you.
Thank you so much. It was a great presentation and very succinct, and it was also a great report. I don't know how many commissioners had a chance to read it, but it was fascinating. So thank you. Does anybody else have comments, questions?
I have one question. Emily, I guess in case they want to hop 7th or hop 3rd, based on your experience, would it work as a general guide to identify an expanded study area based on age of houses? Because I know it's like, obviously houses will get modified and it's like no longer contributing, once they get that vinyl siding. But would that be a general guide would that be another potential guide for, boundaries to the east and west, or what are your thoughts?
Yes, that's a good question. I have, just because I'm from Bismarck and I know the area very well, I have taken a look at the properties along 3rd Street and the properties along 7th Street, not in any official way. I didn't include this in a report. But as you move further east to 7th Street, there are a number of properties that are from the 19-teens, but more so from the late 1920s into like 1935. And if you wanted to follow my recommendation for the period of significance, you'd be sort of leaving that period and stretching further along, which would be fine, but it might kind of change the periods of significance, or it might maybe possibly dilute the concentration really that we have here. And something to consider, Bismarck High School, that building was built in 1935, and with 1930 being my recommended cutoff date, that the properties east of 7th Street might be less related to this early development in the South Capitol neighborhood. It's a little bit later. Along 3rd Street, there are a number of older homes. If you think about Avenue B to the west of the former governor's mansion, that whole block of houses, they are all contemporaneous and along 3rd Street. But as you get north of C, I see some integrity issues and sort of continuity loss. So I think it's worth looking at 2 3rd Street and 2 7th Street. I think there are a number of reasons why you can make a justification for that to be, max out there. Another benefit of going to 7th Street is I think that we would be remiss if you were to pursue a district nomination without including the Erastus Williams House, which is known by a lot as the townhouse, which is on the National Register of Historic Places already individually, but that's a very important home in this neighborhood that a lot of people would associate with some of these other contemporaneous people. And if you went out to 7th Street, you'd be able to pick up that property as a contributing property and part of the history of this neighborhood. So a little bit more reconnaissance work along 7th Street and 3rd Street, but I think it wouldn't go the whole north-south boundary that you see here. So maybe 3 blocks along 3rd Street, and maybe along the north side, maybe 3 blocks around on 7th Street, and you'd get a better picture.
Okay, thank you.
Sounds good. And I know that when we first put a dart in the map as to where we wanted to start with this, it was just basically to figure out what period of significance are our options. And then kind of like what we did with the Highland Acre survey, we could always have additions to the nomination after we get this solidified and as a district, and then we can do expansion work as well in later years, because we're just getting started here.
Absolutely, could be amended.
Yes. Commissioner Nodlin?
Thank you for it. I think it's really interesting too. I really liked it. I have the same question, I guess, that when I read it. I'm wondering if you know, this is not a quiz, how many properties, are there any properties after 1930 that are eligible? And I have a couple of questions, so let me just,
Eligible individually?
yeah.
This feels like a quiz.
No, or
just kidding.
contributing, or contributing. I mean, I guess what my question
Yes,
is.
there are properties beyond 1930 that, in my first glance through everything, they have sufficient integrity that they reflect their 1930s, 1940s appearance. And so if you extended the period of significance, there would be some from later than 1930 that would be contributing. I just think that there's a big case to be made for the development. The history of this neighborhood is really that it's old Bismarck, and it's between the downtown and the Capitol, and it's where development shifted from being east-west along the railroad when they
Right.
determined where they're going to place the Capitol. Then suddenly everybody starts building north. And I think that story is reflected in the boom period, basically, of when these houses were built. And there's later infill, but really it kind of caps off. There's sort of a time period where around 1930, that's the things taper off. And there are other contributing factors to that, just the availability of lots, but also, Great Depression and all sorts of things.
So my other questions are, does doing the cutoff in 1930 affect the other homes in the district that are from the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s I don't know this, of getting any kind of tax credit or eligibility, or would they have to go toward that process themselves? They'd have to go through all of that? Or does it, so just curious, it's 50 years we're leaving off. I understand the rationale, but for the people who are in the district but after 1930, do you know how that affects?
I would defer to Lauren if there's any kind of local programs available to homeowners, but it's my understanding that if it's a non-contributing house within a National Register listed district, it is not eligible for grants.
So nothing after 1930 is contributing?
Yes. Well, if we were to pursue this period of significance based on my recommendations, yes.
So you could have a house from the 1940s that's non-contributing.
And it would be non-contributing.
and
It
they're
would be
not
within the
eligible.
neighborhood, but non-contributing. Yeah. Similar to an older property that does date to, say, 1912, but it has been altered and no longer has sufficient integrity, it would be non-contributing
Right,
and
but
not eligible.
I'm just more curious about the people who have an eligible house or a contributing, but because we're cutting off our time period of significance, as you said, arbitrarily based on some things that are rational. I'm just curious if that's, I don't know. I mean, if that's serving the purpose of what we want a historic district for in this neighborhood. But I don't know enough about what that cutoff means, and so that was the question that I raised. My other question is, have you gotten any feedback yet from the SHPO?
Well, first to address your comment, I think that's a great series of questions, Beth, and I completely understand your interest in how this benefits the homeowners and what the city's trying to accomplish with the Historic Preservation Commission. This is really just my recommendation for what I think would be the most successful nomination. It's not to say it's the only way to put forward a nomination. There are other parameters you could set. And as long as the data upholds and you're able to tell the story in a compelling way, then could be successful in other ways. But I think this would be your sort of slam dunk. And the feedback I have not received from SHPO yet. They did notify me that they are reviewing it. Like, they've got it, it's been received, their review period has started.
But nice job.
Thank you.
I would just like to add to, just looking at the color-coded map that has the years following the growing capital city, the tumultuous years, post-World War II, and maturing city. There are only 37 properties in that entire span, where just in the growing capital, it's 125. So just sheer numbers of, it's very,
What percent is that?
it was 69% was.
So 79% of the properties were built between 1882 through 1930, and then after that, there's a pretty sharp decline.
Well, and it might be worth, I mean, I know, I think your recommendation's great. It might be worth if waiting until the additional survey is done, if that has a potential of raising that up to through the 30s or into, you know, into the 40s or whatever that may do. I just hate to lose the inclusion of contributing, what might be contributing eligible properties. And
There's also the possibility that survey along 7th, 8th, 9th Streets might show a concentration of 1930s bungalows. Maybe that's a different story than the story of the South Capitol neighborhood. Maybe that's a, Depression era building in Bismarck.
good point, yeah.
Yeah. Not to say that these homes that wouldn't fall in a period of significance or an area of significance don't have their own story to tell or their own reason to be appreciated.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions for the presenter? Well, you did a fabulous job, and I really love that it's tied into the existing timeline that we have for the community. It really speaks to everything that we've done since inception. And that's a very nice job.
It was kind of nice to be the guinea pig to see how that works as a historic context statement of sorts for a contractor, and I thought it worked pretty well. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you. Set the direction very well.
Thank you very much.
I do have a few rando comments, typos, and of course, Dr. Engel got his hands on it because I was reviewing it at the kitchen table, and he has some nerdy facts for you.
I would be very happy to get any kind of comments or edits or revision requests, and I will address them when I also address SHPOs.
Perfect. Sounds
Thank you.
good. Thank you. So Lauren, do we need a motion to approve the report?
Chair Engel, Commissioners, I don't know if we would necessarily need to approve the report, but if you have any of those revisions, feel free to hand them off to staff. I'll compile them all together. That way,
Sounds good.
our consultant doesn't have to read multiple ones.
Okay, they're not that extensive. There's a handful of typos and nerdy facts, but okay, thank you. Sounds good. Okay, then we will move along to the 2025 Historic Preservation Fund grant update.
Thank you, Chair Engel and Commissioners. This update is related to our Historic Preservation Plan project that's under this grant. The Historic Preservation Plan Subcommittee has submitted the draft document for review by this commission. The document is expected to be available digitally on the city's website for the public to review. However, this will, once adopted by both this commission and the city commission, it'll be made available online as well. The printed copies will be provided to members of this commission to assist with its roles and responsibilities. The subcommittee would like to provide the opportunity, as I said, for that public comment prior to adoption of the plan. A potential timeline for that adoption is included in the agenda. If approved by the Historic Preservation Commission staff and the Historic Preservation Commission chair, will bring the plan to the City Commission for final adoption. Staff recommends reviewing and providing feedback on the submitted draft plan to staff.
Great. Thank you, Lauren. Did everybody get a chance to read through it? Hopefully, yes. Did everyone do their homework? I know Emily's was way more fascinating. Any thoughts? Yes. Lauren.
Chair Engel, I can give a little bit of an overview of what's in there. You can see on here that there's some of the contents that are laid out within the plan. It includes an introduction with several key pieces of background information, you know, what is a historic preservation plan? What is preservation? That information's included in there, as well as information on why preservation is important. That also includes those icons, those 4 icons on the side there. Those are for letting people know how to use the plan, what information in the plan might be most beneficial for certain individuals, such as homeowners who are looking for grants that might work for their properties, if they're a contributing resource, or if there's any local resources that might be beneficial to property owners for houses. It further goes on to explain how the plan was developed. Different steps, including the creation of the Bismarck timeline, is included in there. There is a section on the goals and objectives. You did see several months back a huge table that you went through and looked through all the key pieces in that. This is a not as detailed version of that. That detailed version will be kept in for internal staff review and for us to keep track of those different goals and objectives. Hopefully, hoping to keep this commission updated on where we are for the status of those. What you're seeing in that plan there is to give the general public an idea of what we're looking at there and what might we be looking forward, or if they have ideas on how to further those goals and objectives. There's a section on preservation laws and funding, both at the federal, state, and local levels, as that is available. There's information on historic resources, both what a designation means, what goes into a survey, what is a survey. There's a section on threats to historic resources, looking at both different acts of weather that might contribute to the destruction of historic properties, as well as demolition of properties, among other different threats, and what might be done by this commission or the public for those. There's a list of historic resources pulling from the state's registry, which is very similar to the National Register list that we have. That's included in there. It should be the most up-to-date version that we have for that. And then finally, we have our preservation plan survey and results. I believe about a year ago, we had comments from this commission on how you'd like to see some of that information included in this plan, specifically looking at how that reflects the different age groups that were surveyed. So the certain questions were pulled from that survey and included in this plan, the ones that were most relevant to those goals and objectives that were in the plan. If you have any questions or if you're good with that, please feel free to let me know.
And I think overall, the whole subcommittee was just trying to keep our eye on anybody who's looking for any information. This is a good place to start to get questions answered. If you're a homeowner, if you're a builder, if you're a government agency, or if you're a contractor, just trying to get some baseline information. And it's very compact. It's only 33 pages now instead of the book that we had envisioned, which is great. So are there any questions or thoughts? Yes, Commissioners.
I think it's a really nice, clean piece. I'm very impressed with the work that subcommittee did. I think that's very good.
Yeah. Was y'all started it back in the day. And, yeah, but
Well, yeah, 2019. So, a fabulous job. Thank you so much to all the subcommittee, and all the volunteers. I am curious because it took us this long to get to it. I have a couple questions, but one is kind of like, what can we as a HPC count on this as its shelf life? Should it get us through 5 years or 10 years? Or what do we hope that this does?
I'm gonna turn that over to Lauren because she popped up, so she clearly has an answer.
I'm hoping it's long.
Commissioner Nodland, Chair Commissioners, there is actually a small objective in the goals and objectives section. I can't quote the exact one, but it does have the expected shelf life of this specific document. And it's supposed to be more so of a living document for the most part. It likely won't be updated too much on that. But the expected shelf life of this specific document is 10 years. Typically going beyond that, you're not kind of staying relevant with what you're seeing in the community for that. And you're expecting to see that a lot of your goals and objectives are being met or that you've accomplished a lot of that. And it's time to update what you're seeing in that.
And that longer list of those objectives and goals, those had very brief, like 0 to 1 year, 1 to 3 years, that sort of thing. So that's going to be where we see most of the action, and hopefully this document can stay as is. Yes.
Okay, so I just want to say, I really appreciated the places in it where it listed some of the things that we've accomplished, like the walking trail maps and the timeline and stuff like that. And there was a part of me that was like, I want to see that on a list somewhere, whether not for this purposes, but it just felt like we've gotten a lot done in
We absolutely
7
have.
years, 6 years. So, my other thing that I kind of came away with it, that I really thought was interesting was in the survey results, that so many people, the number one place or resource that people went to, they said they would go to get information about Bismarck's history is the State Historic Preservation, or the History Center, or the archives. And I think that's an opportunity for us to collaborate or encourage. I don't think it's easy to find information about Bismarck proper at the State Historical Society. There's no exhibits in the History Center, there's no exhibits. It's hard, and when you're doing research there, there's not a person there who's sort of an expert on Bismarck history. And so I'm wondering if we can work with them or help them or somehow encourage them, since they're in Bismarck, to come up with an exhibit or something for Bismarck, people interested in the history of Bismarck. Because if that's where everybody's going, what are they finding there? So that was just something out of that result of that I thought, man, we should try and encourage them. Maybe they could take it on, maybe we take it on and help them, I don't know.
Well,
Commissioner Saxon?
in response to those comments, I think that because I am in that building as an employee, and there are so many times that people come in, and one of the great things about, I'm speaking specifically of the archives, and if they go to the desk and Beth Campbell is there, they know who to send somebody to. If somebody has a question that they know they're not going to get an answer to from the staff there, they're really good at saying, well, I think you need to talk to, this person at Bismarck Historical Society, or these things. They are very good at making sure that people, if they aren't going to easily get the information they want, they're really good at pointing them to the resources that there are there, that are there for them to go to. And I see it time after time, because everybody up in the archives in the state, they have their own areas of expertise, and it's not Bismarck. So, it's unreasonable for us to expect them to, but it's always been kind of a conflict of, we have this great museum everybody's going to, but it's not telling Bismarck's story the way you might expect it to because it's in the city. Would it be nice if we had a room? Yeah.
A panel.
But, that's a conflict that's always going to exist there. Their resources are never going to go to telling Bismarck's story. But that's one of the reasons that we're doing what we're doing. We're trying to fill that void for people, or that gap for people, and get people connected to the information that they want.
I think 2 of the 4 goals that we have in here is raising awareness about our own history and educational elements. So we've got our work cut out for us, but we can definitely help out with that. It's a good point. All right. Let's see. Any further discussion about the plan before we move on? Nope. Then we'll move on to the land development code discussion.
Thank you, Chair Engel and Commissioners. The Land Development Code, if you may be aware, has been a long time coming. We had an initial meeting about a year ago with this commission, just discussing what thoughts this commission had related to historic preservation and how that might be included or identified within the Land Development Code. The Land Development Code was adopted on May 26th of this year. It does have an effective date on October 1st. Part of the Land Development Code, there's, I'd say, 3 main areas that relate to historic preservation that this commission should be aware of. The first one that's probably most relevant is the update to the downtown zoning district. So that change, it's more it includes more objective development standards, focused more on the form of development rather than the uses that we currently see in our code for zoning. So we're looking at maintaining more that form of development that we historically saw in that area, or that we'd like to see going forward. The second item is more so the addition of a historic preservation commissioner acting as a technical advisor for our design review in downtown. This commission, as was mentioned, was formed in 2019. That section of the code was added well before then. It just never got updated to include the Historic Preservation Commission. So we've taken care of that currently. So we'll be looking for a technical advisor for this commission to advise related to historically significant buildings, specifically for listed buildings or buildings within the downtown district, including subsequent additions or updates to that downtown district, which we might see coming forward with our future projects in that area. And then the third area that's relevant or may be relevant is the allowance for variances for historic buildings. Again, part of that variance is more so in lieu of the standard variance component. This commission never really deals with that. It'll be handled by the Board of Adjustment for that, but it's just something for you to be aware of. And that variance is more so if there's a need or necessity to maintain that historic character of the building or site, and it's related to listed buildings in the National Register or that downtown district. It wouldn't be outside of those components with how this code is written here. I'll stand for any questions you guys have on this.
Commission? Anything? No? Do you need a nomination for one of us to be that representative, the technical advisor?
That would be helpful.
Any volunteers, nominations? Yes.
Commissioner Engel, Commissioners, I would love to see John Swanson, Commissioner Swanson, in that role because he has perhaps the most educated insight into this sort of thing, being an architect, and very knowledgeable about all the sort of things that might be more technical in some ways than many of us would have. So I nominate John Swanson.
Second.
And I didn't get a choice when they nominated me for chair, so we're not going to let you talk.
No, I that would be very interesting. I think I'd like to do that, so.
Okay.
Yeah, those are things that I would,
So it's not on
you know, as part of my business, so.
Awesome. That's cool.
I would enjoy that, I think, yeah.
Sounds good. So we have a motion and a second and an acceptance of the nomination, which is even a bigger bonus. Can we call a roll then?
Commissioner Perrin?
Yes.
Do I ask John?
Nope.
Okay. Commissioner Sacrison?
Yes.
Commissioner Nodland?
Yes.
Commissioner Zanker?
Yes.
Commissioner Hall?
Yes.
And Chair Engel?
Yes. Congratulations, John. Thank you for being volunteered for that. Is there any other business that is not on the agenda? Hearing none, sorry. Whoa, you got to move faster than that, Beth.
It's July business now.
Yes, Commissioner Nodland.
Chair Engel and Commissioners, I would like to extend the HBC's thanks to Commissioner Zanker for all of the work that he's done for us over all of the years, and
Just two.
Two.
This board.
And for, the ideas and help and the guidance, like on the recent convention or table that we did. So thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Beth, for remembering that. And
You're very
thank
welcome.
you.
Happy to do that.
Amazing.
And I've had far fewer parking tickets.
Oh,
Has nothing to do with
all right. I think with that, we're adjourned. The next meeting is July 15th at 3 p.m. right here in the Tom Baker meeting room. We'll see you next month. Thank you.
Fantastic.